Welcome back. It's time for another episode of Keeping It Real Estate, with the one woman who really knows the real deal, the real answers. It's the one and only, the real Rosanne Nitti. Hey, Rosanne.
Hey, Paul. Good afternoon.
So if you got the real answers, you got some real answers today here. I'm impressed. You don't just have your own opinions. You got facts to back it up today here.
Yeah, my guest today is Craig Martin. He's a senior director of mortgage practices at J.D. Powers, and we're happy to have him. Hi, Craig. Are you there?
I am here.
Hey, welcome. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Great. Well, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you've been with J.D. Powers for some time, and you do a lot of speaking around mortgage-related conferences and events. But tell us a little bit about your personal life and what you do in your free time.
Well, I am a father of four.
That keeps you busy.
That pretty much takes up all my free time, I think.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but no, I've been working for J.D. Power for 6 years. I really enjoy it. It keeps me very busy, touring around the country, working with a number of different organizations, working in the home lending space. But as that 4 kids, I'm actually a resident of Alabama these days, but grew up in New York, and just spend a lot of my free time just hanging out with the family.
Oh, awesome. One of my dear friends and clients who did a testimonial show a couple weeks ago, Robin McDonald, she lived in Birmingham for a while. I have some dear friends in Birmingham, but just Sunday she did a little brunch for us with her famous shrimp and grits, so that was fun. Yeah, Alabama-style shrimp and grits. That was nice.
Very good.
Yeah.
Nothing better.
Yeah, awesome. So with J.D. Powers, you're a consultant, you're a speaker. Tell me a little bit about what else you do in your everyday life.
Most people obviously think of us, or at least are most familiar with our auto studies. And so we have our annual studies that rate satisfaction, and so I manage the wealth and lending group more broadly, but specifically my area of focus has been mortgage lending, and now has actually moved into real estate satisfaction. So we have another study that looks at home buyer satisfaction. So we're starting to move around a little bit and change the way we've looked at the consumer in the home lending space. But really, we really try to take the customer's perspective, and we call ourselves the voice of the customer, and that's really at the heart of what we do. We try to go through surveys, through various means, collect the feedback and input that the customer has, and take that out to the marketplace to help them perform better, take care of the consumer better and make a better experience. That's at the heart of what we do. Again, it's research-based. It's a lot. We do hundreds of surveys each year across a variety of segments of consumers. But at the end of the day, what we find is that the consumer really knows what they want, and they're happy to tell us what's going on in their mind, and we take those perceptions and try to share those back with the company so they can improve the experience they give to the consumer.
I think that's great for us real estate brokers. Let's see, I've been in business 23 years now, and I've seen so many changes. And there's many changes ahead, and as we all know, it's based on our clients, our customers. We need ears. We need to listen to them and hear what they have to say. It's really important that we listen instead of just talk. A lot of realtors have a bad reputation for not listening and just steering people in the wrong direction or in a direction that they're not happy with. In fact, Paul, our station manager, can tell you his story.
I'm a living example of it.
He's a living example of unsatisfaction. So, so tell a little bit about some of these surveys. It was really interesting, looking through some of this stuff. And when we're talking about first-time home buyers and their experience in the lending process and the buying process, there's so much online information for people, and I think it can be overwhelming. And I think it's really important to be able to connect with an agent or a source that can help educate them on what the process is like. So what are you finding that's unique or different among this group of first-time home buyers and their experiences?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think you're right on in that, folks are more than ever really making their first efforts, first bit of research online, and you can talk about digital in general, and it could be at their laptop or tablet at home, it could be on the fly when they've got their mobile phone in front of them. But that is a critical piece. And so one of the things for the first-time home buyers is they tend to start the process online. They start thinking about shopping for a home and how do they afford a home, and is it the right time and the right place, and what should they be doing. I think there's an education portion that really happens online first. And that's a key step we're seeing across a number of studies, but it certainly plays out particularly in the home buying process, where there's an education and information gathering step. But like you said, there is still the need for an expert. And the critical piece, particularly with first-time home buyers, is people will joke, and many of the first-time home buyers are millennials, and everyone thinks, the millennials, there's a lot of myths and kind of preconceived notions about them. But what we have found is that while they shop online and they do some research online, they still want to turn to an expert, and they are really looking for that human touch. Like a lot of cases, they want to be educated and informed and feel like they're making the right decision, but they still recognize they're not experts, and they recognize the value of an expert.
Yeah, common myth, I think, right?
Yeah, well, and it's interesting. I don't think everyone thinks it's just this new generation, and of course, millennials are they're unique and different than everyone else has ever been, and in fact, I think in a lot of cases that's not actually true. It's just younger consumers tend to be this way, and if you look back in history, you'll see this pattern. The interesting thing, my parents actually are in the process of moving right now. And I feel like they're going through the same thing. They're actually, and so I think you're going to see similar trends, not only for the younger generation, but as older generations are downsizing or moving to retirement homes and other things. They're going to be looking for that advice and guidance.
It's a major process. I just moved my parents. My parents just moved tomorrow. Let's see, Thursday will be 2 weeks in their new home.
Wow.
They were in their house for 54 years, and it was an amazingly smooth yet challenging experience just for, the process of downsizing. And, my dad finally retired at 82 years old, so there was, a lot of working parts, and they turned to me a lot for just handling that transaction for them and making sure that everything was smooth behind the scenes. So, and I find with my younger clients as well, the millennials, and people are savvy. They want to look, they want to be knowledgeable, but they also want someone that they can talk to and someone that, has their ear to the ground to know what's actually going on.
Absolutely. I think you're spot on. It's interesting. When my parents were doing their move, they went on Zillow and they were doing the research, but in the end, they still turned back to an expert to say, you know this business, you know what's going on, and I trust you, and I really need your advice and guidance about what's the right way to do this. And I think, what are people willing to pay for? There's all this discussion about, we're going to cut costs and we're going to eliminate all humans from every interaction. And I think in the end, what you find is people are willing to pay for that advice because they want to make sure they make a good decision, especially in a home buying situation where, one of the bigger financial choices they're going to make, they don't want to make a mistake. They don't want to be wrong. So they really want to have that confidence. So I think certainly we're seeing more and more that need for trust and confidence, and that comes from the human interaction and the experts in the industry.
Yeah, and educating them. When I first encounter a buyer, whether they've bought before, maybe even if they've bought years ago or sold years ago, things have changed so much. So I'm always updating them with information and educating them. And, I'm the guide, but it's also the process where I can help them make the proper decisions. They ultimately make those decisions, but being able to guide them to make the right decisions, especially, if I buy a house online today and I press that button, well, I don't know about termites. I don't know, about different things. And I also moonlight as a photographer, so photographs can be deceiving as well. So it's pretty interesting where you have to have someone on the ground to do that. So, Craig, we are going to take a quick break for about a minute, and we'll be back. And then let's talk about some of the various market conditions and things that are impacting the consumer behavior. We'll be right back.
Imagine what it would feel like to lose everything. Your job, your home, your family, your dignity. This has happened to thousands of the men, women, veterans, and young adults we serve at Working Wardrobes. What do we do to help? We provide career development services, life skills workshops, job skills training. We provide the perfect interview outfit, and we get clients placed in jobs. Call Working Wardrobes, 714-210-2460. Donate, volunteer, invest, hire.
All right, back to Rosanne and her guest.
Hi, guys. We're back with Craig Martin from J.D. Power. We're talking about technology, the lending process, how things are changing. Craig, originally, when I heard of you, there was a study that had come through our desk involving some of the things that we've been talking about. How do those studies affect the market conditions, the rates, the housing supply, and impact the consumer behavior? How do we tie those studies into our everyday working with clients?
I think there's a couple of factors, and one is, you're really, if you think about the consumer, they're looking at you as an expert for all things that go into the home buying process. So, you can show them great houses, you can show them, like say, great pictures, but in the end, your goal is to help them find something that makes sense. So that affordability, with rising rates, rising home prices, those challenges, part of that is setting up the expectations of what's realistic, what's possible. And one of the things that we found in our studies, the most dissatisfying situations come when expectations are not met. So as you look at a rising rate environment and some of the challenges that will create, setting expectations up front for the consumer about what is possible, what's reasonable, how do you get yourself ready for home buying, even what happens after you buy the house. I think a lot of times you can go through all the steps of a great process, but afterwards, if the customer's surprised or shocked, maybe they they purchased a home using a variable rate loan, and then lo and behold, rates start to rise, and they're actually not able to afford that home going forward. Obviously, that's a bad situation for all involved. So
Absolutely.
I think part of the critical piece is as rates rise, setting that upfront expectations, managing people, because the worst thing that can happen is they get their heart set on a house, get their heart set on a situation, and then it's not possible. And then you're left kind of holding the bag of being the bearer of bad news. They feel like maybe they've been misled. And all those situations create negative feelings from the consumer, and obviously that's bad for business, but it's bad for kind of all parties involved.
Absolutely. It's crazy. And that's one of the first things that I do is when I speak to someone. I had a call last week from a man who said, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I want to buy a house. And, it was an interesting conversation because I said, well, what do you do for work? And he said, I'm not working. And I said, well, where do you live? And he said, well, I'm living in my car. And I said, okay. But he said he had a down payment. So I can't jump to conclusions. I don't know the person. So I did send him to my lender, and lo and behold, he's got money in the bank, and he does play guitar for a living. So it's just very interesting what the perception of who can afford a house and who can't. And I think that's the first step. Now, do you do any pre-qualifying or anything in your business, or are you mostly just looking at the behaviors and the conditions?
We're really just looking at the behaviors and the conditions. So once we look at the shopping and the consideration, but in terms of the approval process, we're really focusing on the consumer's perceptions of the process. Now, having talked with the folks at kind of National Association of Realtors and others, certainly a factor that I think is critical that comes into play is how do you help people deal with situations like you're talking about, setting that expectation to say, I understand this is your profile, recognize what that means for you. So if you've got student loan debt, if you've maybe had a divorce recently, or other life events that potentially are red flags, letting people know that those are red flags during the process is important. Just not red flags in a negative way, but it will create extra scrutiny, or obviously any outstanding debts and other factors that create kind of question marks with a lender. Are always good to let people know, hey, be prepared to answer more questions, because it's not like you're making six figures with an easy
right.
Annual W-2 and all those basic things. Those make it simple and straightforward.
Right, and I find that with people who are starting to look, they start looking at homes without really knowing what they can, what their affordability rate is, or what they can afford. So I think I always steer people to the lending end of it. Please, I have a couple of different lenders. Feel free to call them all, have a conversation, find out what you qualify for, so that we know, when I go in to buy a bottle of champagne, am I going to buy the Cristal or I'm going to buy the Chandon? What can I afford today? So it's important to really know.
Absolutely.
What do you find in your surveys about the housing supplies, the tax reform, any regulatory changes? How are they impacting consumer behavior?
I think in many ways consumers are a little bit, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but somewhat oblivious to what goes on and the impacts. And they recognize tax reform happens, but what are the implications for them? We've asked in the past, their awareness of, like, for example, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau or various regulatory agencies and actions and activities that are going on. And from their standpoint, they really just aren't very clear and aware. Obviously, there's implications, and I think the balancing act that's really hard for lenders and realtors is you have to explain why things are happening and the situations that you're facing, because that's the reality of the marketplace. At the same time, the customer doesn't want to hear you blame the government for something.
Right, and we have to be, unbiased and informed, and be able to, I'm not an attorney and I'm not a tax person. So, there's a lot of different people that are involved in a real estate transaction, whereas a friend I spoke to yesterday said, I have a business that I want to sell, and we don't want to use any brokers. How do we go through this? And I said, well, I recommend that you talk to an attorney and you have somebody draw up the paperwork, and you need to talk to the professionals that can handle this kind of stuff. And especially when I'm doing 1031 exchanges or purchases with an IRA or different more complicated tax things, I don't know all the different implications that could affect that particular client. And that's where having that ability to educate them and let them know who they need to speak to and all these different facets of the transaction.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I mean, the people, when we ask consumers, one of the most important things is creating that trust and that confidence. And that doesn't mean you have to be the expert of all things. It's you have the right partners to work with. You build that confidence. You can explain logically why we're doing these things. They feel like you're being authentic and you understand what's going on. And really it's putting yourself in their shoes. And when customers point to those things, and again, we're talking about a customer perception, but those actions and activities, like I've got a couple of mortgage partners that you can shop, and they always do well by me, but I won't pick one versus another. Here's here's my, the attorneys that we tend to work with, and I'd recommend speaking with them if you have these type of questions or these situations. That demonstrates kind of value add to the consumer and
Absolutely.
A real benefit, and they're likely to come back and recommend you and support you versus maybe saying, it was an okay experience that got me the house, but wasn't really something that stuck in my mind as a great experience.
Right, and a lot of people don't have great experiences. Paul didn't have a very good experience when he bought a house, and one of the things for me is most of my business is from referrals. So if you're going to refer me, one of your family members or friends, I do kind of keep it real. I'm pretty honest about the situation. I build that trust by being authentic and saying, well, I don't think this house is for you unless you know exactly what you're getting into. This is a money pit. This is this, and those certain situations. I've had situations where people have loved a house, and I said, I don't really think that's a best buy for you. Maybe you need to reconsider that. Ultimately, it's your decision, and I think that's helpful for me in my business. I'm not there just for the quick sale. I'm there to help that person and those people become my friends, and that's what's truly important.
Yeah, and again, that I think in the end that drives better business results. And in the end, you're going to be successful long term by not taking the shortcuts and advising people. We've found that oftentimes, while customers may want to hear or think they want to hear an answer, when you actually are forthcoming and honest and truthful about the situation, even when it may not be the best news from the consumer standpoint, they are much happier. They recognize that you're looking out for them, you've advised them, it demonstrates your expertise and even your understanding of their needs by saying, you've told me these things, and you can afford this much. You've told me you don't want to do any renovations, you don't want to do these 5 things, and because of that, this doesn't seem like a good choice.
Now you have to listen to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're almost towards the end of our interview. We've got about 2 minutes left, and real quick, how do you think the rising interest rate is impacting the behaviors right now today? We've noticed in Orange County a bit of a slowdown in our we're into June now, and our May spring buying just kind of came to a standstill in mid-May. So what are you seeing in your surveys in regards to that?
I think what we're seeing is that consumers, obviously the refi slowdown is pretty dramatic. So that has driven some of just the general business. But in terms of the purchase marketplace, I think people have stepped back and are easing into it a bit more slowly. Mm-hmm. So, we are seeing the slowdown. Certainly the marketplace is not like it has been trending in the last few years. I think part of that is people are being a little more cautious. The rising rates have, in general, what we see is rate outside of a large spike or kind of historic lows in the refinance. The natural progression of purchase is going to happen. I mean, they aren't going to stop buying by a quarter percentage point move, and even the price sensitivity that people tend to think of tends to not be as much an issue. The problem more so is in that the affordability. And so as the rates come up, the home prices rise, what can I actually afford? I think the average payment just through kind of the market developments was up $125 a month or something to that effect recently. And so as people have, the cost to be able to pay for that home and that monthly payment goes up, that affordability goes down, and then the supply is not there. And so I think you've got this challenge right now of what's out there and available that meets the needs of the person who's probably ready to buy, but maybe doesn't have the home available for them. And I think that's the biggest challenge we're hearing is a lot of people are wanting to, but maybe not able to. They haven't quite met that threshold, or the numbers just aren't working out.
That's true. I see that every day and more. And my Orange County housing report yesterday was amazing, where we are kind of easing into a shift. Well, Craig, I appreciate you coming on the show today. Is there a website to some of your surveys, or some way where some of my listeners can go and hear a little bit more or see a little bit more about what we talked about?
Sure. So our website is www.jdpower.com, and our mortgage studies fall underneath our financial services group. So if you find our financial services group, you'll find our press releases that have overviews of our studies and information there. So, and that would include home buying and selling, as well as mortgage origination and mortgage servicing.
Fabulous. Well, thank you for coming on today. I appreciate you having me. We appreciate you coming on. I'm sorry. My name's Rosanne Nitti. I'm with the Nitti Group. You can reach me at Nitti Group. That's NITTI.com, or give me a ring at 949-315-9104. Have a good afternoon, everyone.